Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to yet again another fantastic indie creator interview. It's your Cape Crusader Cody, and we are keeping it geekly with our new guest and one returning guest. We have CJ Hudson and Devin R. Scott. We're here to break down Bearer of Ages and everything in between. Devin, CJ, welcome to the stream. How are you guys doing?
Good. Thanks for having us, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great to be back.
Dude, Devin. But CJ, real quick, before we dive into you, Devin, give us a little bit about how have you been and how did that Kickstarter end up going for you, man?
Everything has been fantastic since we last spoke. Kickstarter made it to its goal. I think
Let's
about
go.
$4 past the goal, which was $7,000. Actually finishing things up right now for Magni. I'm hoping to at least get things ready to go by next week, hopefully. So that way people can start getting digital rewards for what digital rewards there are. And then we should be rolling into print shortly after.
No, that is awesome. That's awesome. CJ, sorry, man. I had to do a little catch up with Devin. It's been a little bit since we had him on the show. Almost 100 interviews, I think, right? 150 almost. I don't know. It's been a lot. But CJ, you are the new guest on the show. Give us a little bit about who you are, and then let's take a dive into how you got into creating comics.
Yeah, so CJ Hudson, comic book writer. I have my own creative studio called Warn Everyone Comics, which is really like any other studio from anyone else that just wants to brand themselves under a studio, and just focusing on creating original content. It's where I do my work for hire arrangements with different publishers and create anything on my own or with other creative partners like Devin's Epic Fantasy line.
No, that's awesome. And Devin, I mean, we have you on the show too. Give us a little bit about that. You know, this is a new imprint label for you?
Yes, actually. Epic Fantasy was something I originally built, sort of like how CJ has his Warn Everyone Comics. Epic Fantasy was my thing. It was going to be everything that I ever released. So, you know, if, say, I had a new drop, it was going to be through that or what have you. But somewhere along the line, I ended up saying, you know what, why should I do this alone? And I actually invited CJ and Isaac Wilbanks to join with me. It was Isaac first because, I pitched him the idea first. We did some things behind the scenes. And then CJ came right before the Magni campaign, if I'm correct. And it's just been magic ever since. So we've been, getting things set up for the year of 2023. Got a lot of big drops, with this one being the first project of the year. Bearer of Ages is phenomenal. I loved everything about it. Happy to have CJ along with us here at Fantasy, and I hope everybody else enjoys the book as much as I do.
No, that's so cool. So CJ, give us a little bit about some of your previous works, like with your earlier books. Like, how did you get to creating comics too? What was like your very first book?
Oh man, I think I started reading comics at a pretty young age. I think I was just reminding myself, I was like, when did I start? It was Wolverine issue like 79, I think, where Wolverine's fighting Sauron on the cover. I think a lot of people remember like one of their first comics, right? Like you at least remember one of your top tens. And I was just hooked ever since, and just always had this vision of writing. And finally, about 5 years ago, started getting into it, created my first comic, Interstellar Dust. Went through all the motions of sending things out to publishers, tried doing a Kickstarter. I was very unknown at the time. I did awful, only funded 10% of the goal, was feeling really down, and then finally heard back after about a dozen no's, and some nice replies back, not necessarily saying, hey, this is a shit comic, you're never gonna make it. A lot of times something just isn't right for a specific publisher, and that makes a lot of sense. But I got a reply back from Antarctic Press, and they said, we'd love to do this book with you. Let's do it. And they decided to do a kind of a dual flip comic, kind of like an old Marvel 2-in-1, where I did Interstellar Dust, and there was another comic, Hazel, and we published it through the Off-World Sci-Fi double feature anthology. And it did pretty well from that standpoint. And now I'm actually gearing up for volume 2 of that, and it'll actually be its own standalone miniseries with them. So that was the first thing, and then that led into some work for higher arrangements with Astro.
I think might have lost CJ. Interview's getting too hyped. You know, that happens. Not a problem. Devin, though, I mean,
there we
Oh,
go.
he's back.
Sorry.
Not a problem. Not a problem.
Yeah, I'm gonna do my computer next time. I was like, oh, this will be easy. I'll just sign on this way. But then people call you, and then you go black. But whatever. Yeah, and then working with Ad Astra Media, which is an organization that creates original content geared towards kids and STEAM-based learning. So I write a webtoon for them, Intergalactic Academy, and I've been doing that for a number of years.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, and some other comics that I've helped develop with them, and hopefully turning some of them into other media platforms. Like we've been looking at doing cartoons and standalone movie features, and then also doing some work for another small press, Woven Press. And then my new arrangement has been with Band of Bards, where I signed a 4-series deal with them, ranging from miniseries to one-shots. I'm about halfway through that arrangement. And then most recently working with Devin, which has really been a godsend in a lot of ways, because I was looking for another way to get content out there, and through Kickstarters or crowdfunding, but not having the capacity to do it on my own. And the kind of sync that we all have with Devin and Isaac and I has been really great. We're really on the same page in terms of books we want to get out the door. We all contribute in different ways. So it feels like kind of a renaissance of like an old creative studio or publisher that's just like, you know, just really hitting the ground running.
So how did this meeting initially happen? And Devin, I'd be interested in hearing your first impression as well when you first kind of got the script, because Bearer of Ages is kind of like your passion project, isn't it, CJ? Something you've wanted to like work on for five years, right? Since you first started.
Yeah, it was one of the first things I wrote, actually, and it's just taken a while to get off the ground. I'll answer the first question. Devin has edited a number of my projects for me, and then that's how we just kind of synced up. And I was really flattered when he invited me to work with him at Epic Fantasy. And I mean, in Bearer of Ages, I've been sitting on it for a while. Had the first issue done. It's kind of a longer mini series. I've been working with an artist out of Sri Lanka, Atula Siriwardane. And his style is pretty detailed, and it takes him a little bit of time. And also he's taking a lot of liberties with it in terms of taking my script, but adding in a number of different panels too, which is great. I love it because we're really collaborating on it. But that it's also having me go back then and really forcing me to edit, which is great too, because the end result is always better. I feel the story is essentially the same, but how we get there and the journey along the way is a little bit different. And honestly, it's much better for it.
Oh, that's awesome. So Devin, I mean, it sounds like you already knew CJ a little bit. So did you kind of already have it in mind? You're like, I'm going to reach out to him one day.
Funny enough, CJ was actually on a short list of people that I wanted to essentially add into the fold. I obviously had Isaac. You know, Isaac and I talk pretty much every day, every other day, however many times a week. That was already a given. He was already the first one there. But CJ, I would say top 5 people that I really, really, really enjoy, speaking with, collaborating with on his projects when I edit for him, which is always fantastic. He's a fantastic writer. I encourage other people to hire CJ because he's phenomenal. But, he was one of those people I'm like, well, we talk enough to where, we're comfortable enough to, get to this point. So why not ask him? So I think I forget if I sent him a formal email essentially asking, or I maybe mentioned it to him in passing, whichever came first. But everybody that works with us will, get a formal email essentially when you're invited. So long as I have your contact information, that is. And there's, a couple more people I want to add this year. I'm not going to name names just yet till they say yes. And, all that cool stuff. But we have a lot of stuff to roll out this year. But CJ is just one of those people that I had to have work under Epic Fantasy, and I'm glad that I made that decision, because like you said, we all pretty much work like traditional studio essentially. We all contribute in different ways. I might edit something or write something. CJ might write something, or vice versa. Isaac, same thing, or letter things for us. We go back and forth, and get various opinions on things. I actually just had CJ do a backup for the next thing that is going to come out, which his backup is phenomenal. And I'm not going to give it away just yet, but let's just say it's going to be two, strong women in one comic book, but obviously main feature plus backup. It's going to be fantastic. But once, that ship sails and we get to that point, we can speak on it again. But for now, this is Bear of Ages.
Yeah, and speaking of women, I mean, we have some powerful women in this story as well. CJ, give us a little bit about what this, concept's about.
Yeah, I was really into the idea of past lives and reliving lives. And this concept isn't new, right? I mean, it's been covered in a lot of movies. I think one of the original people to cover it was Ken Grimwood in his book Replay. And it always struck a chord with me where somebody would have an opportunity to kind of right some wrongs. They would relive those lives over again. And so I kind of took that concept and I toyed with it a little bit and said, well, what if, this next life is really just an essence of someone? They don't remember everything, but the mission and their purpose stays the same, but they're really not the same person. As you can see from the cover, all three of those women are completely different people, but they're all bound together by this sword and this ancient evil that wants to utilize them for a specific purpose. And his mission is always the same, to find that person, and their reaction to his proposals varies, and it has ramifications across different segments of time. So we have a story in feudal Japan, we have one in the distant future, and then we have one that's essentially modern day.
And man, I loved it. Like swinging out the gate, CJ, you had a huge twist, like right out the gate. I'm like, what going on right now? And I just loved it. This book, I had the chance to read an advanced copy. Thank you guys for that. Really appreciate it. And it was awesome. It was awesome.
Oh, thanks,
I loved what you did with the story. I'm trying to tiptoe around spoilers, but man, the concept of it was just awesome. And I loved how it bled into one another. Like each story, bleeds into one.
Yeah, I really tried to toy with really subtle things too, like the panel layouts might be the same in specific segments of the story. Like you can see in the past segment in Japan, where the character Maya is laid out on the ground. Well, then in present day, like that panel is kind of revisited in a way, but it's those three perpetrators that are laid out, but it looks essentially the same. So I tried to make things bleed in together and tried to make it as seamless. It was it's one of the more challenging books I've had to write. How some things, Devin, I'm sure you can speak to this, some things are just easy to write. Like some things can just come really easily and you can bust a script out maybe in a couple hours. This one was a challenge because I had to intertwine a lot of things, and it actually came to a point recently where I hadn't really been thinking about Bear of Ages for a while because it's been done and wrapped and I've just been working on the art, and then we did the Kickstarter and Devin asked me, he's like, so what is Bear of Ages about? Can you sum it up? And I was like, I don't even fucking know. I'm trying to remember what was this story, because it was such a challenge to pull it all together. But I'm really happy with the end result, and for it being one of the first longer miniseries that I wrote. It's going to be 8 issues overall. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out for it being one of my first works, but which is kind of funny because now here I am 5 years later talking about it.
So I was about to ask, having that big time difference, was it, what was it like when you were working with your creative team, like finally getting the art laid out for it? Did you see a lot of changes happen? How was that for you? Because from the Kickstarter, what I read, this was something that you wanted it, you had it up your sleeve, your passion. So was it hard in any way, kind of like working around that?
I mean, I'm really easy on the process. I feel like that's what I have enough things kind of going on to where I'm like, okay, this is something that might not happen for a while. This is more immediate. And like I tell all the artists and collaborators and partners that I work with, I'm like, the end result will always be there, but I'm never going to pressure you to get this done. I know that it'll get done because we're collaborating on it and we're talking about it. And if it takes years and years, it'll take years and years. And some people might be frustrated by it, especially if it's only your one single project. I could see that. But for me, I'm kind of like, this is something that'll take a while. And I might be 50 years old before it's finally done. But that's okay, because I have other things that are coming up more immediately.
50, that could either be very close or very far away, depending on how. So,
I don't
Devin,
know if I want to give my age.
what was it like? Kind of. I mean, like, what's your role in this exactly? Like, how much? What are you like editing? Like, what are you doing outside of being the label?
Outside of being the label, realistically, I'm the publisher. Like, I've edited none. If anything, the only input that I've really had for this project outside of my typical publisher role is the fact that I am consulting on what to do with it. So how are we going to get this out? I'm pretty much editor for a lot of the things we work with and do traditionally, but technically speaking, this was already edited. If anything, I'm giving more critiques, say when the letters were done, or okay, we can get another cover, which ended up being with Rio Burton, which is phenomenal. I'll be taking that to Fantasticon here in Toledo in March. Please check me out if you're in the area.
Is that like that's in Ohio?
Yeah, that's Toledo, Ohio.
I can make that.
You guys gotta meet up.
I can make that. Well, dude. So I didn't think Devin lived in this area.
Yeah, I live in Monroe.
I thought you lived in Michigan.
I do live in Michigan. I live in Monroe, Michigan.
Oh, okay. All right. See. There was.
I'm 30 minutes away from Toledo, which is my hometown.
I'm like an hour and a half. So, see, that's how we're from Ohio. We talk in time. But so, what's it like wearing a different hat this time around? Instead of being the editor, you're the publisher. Like, is it weird for you? Like, how's that feel?
Man, it's a different experience. I've had a lot of experiences, wearing different hats, just doing stuff. I've been a writer, I've been an editor, I've been a production editor for Godhood Comics for their latest drop, GPD, which you should all go pre-order now on their website. But it's just the fact that this was different because just like for the Sentinel, I had a little bit more involvement there, sort of, because I edited that in post, so that way all the dialogue and stuff was mostly straight. I realized there was a couple errors, but it's not gonna happen this next time. But just being able to, I don't know how to really put it in words, because it's a lot different than any other job that I've done. Sit here playing logistically with funds and finances and just trying to
developing the Kickstarter. You did a lot on that, man.
Yeah.
Putting that together. The cover insight. So it feels very much like that traditional publisher role, like getting everything together, making sure we're ready for launch. So yeah, it was invaluable. Have
you done Kickstarters before, CJ, or was this your first one?
I did one 5 years ago, I think, for Interstellar Dust, and it didn't do well. It only hit 10% of goal. The goal was way too high. I was very novice. I was doing it on my own. I self-published a couple of copies, a couple hundred copies or something. And I thought, okay, I'll just fund this through Kickstarter. It looks really good. The art's fantastic. Well, without any marketing behind it, I realized that it's really difficult to get something funded on that. Like, you really have to have a lot of people pulling for you. And there was a lot of things that I should do. I do differently, but then I got picked up by Antarctic, and then it didn't really matter after the fact. But I was very defeated after that. I was like, oh man, I don't know if I can do this. 10% of goal is embarrassing.
So it must be like a nice breath of fresh air having someone else like kind of lift that like weight off your shoulder this time. I heard Kickstarters can be very stressful.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
This is my fifth one technically. I've had 3 losses, 1 actual hit, and then I'm going to make this my next funded one. So I don't care what anybody got to say. Y'all should really throw your money towards this project under our label. Fantastic book, but it's just, having so many L's compared to wins is rough, especially when you are a novice. My first Kickstarter was for Magni the Mighty. I did it obviously the very wrong way. I got a lot of feedback afterwards from the owner of Godhood Comics. A couple other peers told me what I did wrong. Did it again in the following year. Well, probably not even a year actually. It was like not even 11 months, like 10 months. Did it again, but I was a little closer to goal that time. Still didn't make it, but literally right after, maybe a week gone by, Band of Bards ended up picking me up, and we were talking in the short-term focus 2021 situation. It took about a year or so to kind of really get things together, but obviously now I got that under my belt. But I've also been a part of a lot of other successful Kickstarters, Worlds Away, The Saturn Effect, Volume 1, Magnus, which I wrote pretty much every issue and co-wrote as well. The first 3 issues did numbers over the summer. Prolong with Christian Herrera. I've been on all sorts of things that have been successful. My own endeavors might not be as successful as other people, but I still see success where there was none before in a different facet. So I just learn from my mistakes.
I just got the Saturn Effect, what is it, Alpha issue number 4, and then Chris sent me exclusive the trading cards to check out the promo, the prototypes. But dude, they are fire. So speaking of Kickstarter, though, I think right now let's go ahead and pull up the Kickstarter for Barrier of Ages and kind of go through it and see what you guys are campaigning for. Currently at $542 of a $2,500 goal with 24 backers and 29 days left to go. So a day in, and you're already at a chunk of it. How are you guys feeling?
Phenomenal.
I'm feeling pretty good at 20%. I'm pretty happy with that. The goal's relatively small, so I think we can get there. It'll just take more marketing. This is only day 1, so every day we're going to push it. I'm sure we're going to annoy a lot of people, but unfortunately that's how you have to do it. I just put it on my Instagram too, and highlighted the cover artists on there, so I'm hoping I'm going to DM them and hoping they'll add it on to their onto their profiles too. Bella Racklin, who did one of the covers, is phenomenal and has a huge following. So I'm hoping it'll get there.
So right here are some of the interiors. Let's go ahead and check some of these out. So right here we're seeing two of the 3 protagonists in the story. Was it hard for you to kind of blend those stories? Because each of them has like their own unique tale. And it's all like kind of tied together by the sword. Like, was that hard to kind of balance all 3 of them?
Yeah. Yeah, it was a very challenging book to write, and I kind of wrote myself into some corners a couple times, it being one of my first stories, but that's what editing's for. And then went back and tried to blend it a little more seamlessly. And Atula is an old school artist. He's been in the game for a long time. And so every artist always has this blessing for me. I said, if you find a way to change the perspective on this, if you want to add a panel, if you want to merge panels, I will make the dialogue work. I can edit and I can change it down. The story is essentially the same, like I said before, but how we get there will just be a little bit different. And that's what I did this last time, when Isaac was lettering it. I said, okay, this script will be a little bit different because I'm basically, it's not going to sync up. So I have to go through and sync up this dialogue with these panels. But honestly, it's 10 times better than had he not added in or merged some of these panels to provide new perspective. Comics really is a partnership in a lot of ways. And so I always tell writers that are just starting out, like, listen to your artists. If they really feel like they want to change this a little bit, go with it and make it a collaborative experience, because everybody will have a better experience because of it.
So I got to ask, say you have the same colors, right?
Same colors, yeah.
It's remarkable because it almost looks like there's two different colorists, like almost three too. If you kind of like look at these panels too, it's remarkable how like each story has its own, like, I don't know how to word it. Like, I wouldn't say color palette, but like, you know, this almost has like a lighter tone to it, and the futuristic one's like way darker, you know. And I love how your artist was able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Attila, was really savvy with that. He wanted to change. I think you're right. I think it is palette. Like he wanted to change it and make some adjustments, and I said, yeah, I'd go for it. That sounds really great to me. So yeah, we've had a lot of fun with it, and a lot of emails back and forth on things. When I sent him the first script, he said, I really like this. It'll be a challenge. He said, here's some things that I want though. He wanted a little bit more action in the beginning. So that fight scene in the beginning, that was his plea to me, saying, I want to draw more fighting. There's a huge epic fight at the end. But I was like, yeah, I mean, that totally works.
Shaking my head. The twist I gave CJ credit for was from the artist.
Yeah. Well, it was collaborative. So he wanted them to fight. Like I had it more of a subtle encounter, I'll say, where it was still going to happen, the way it ended up, but the fighting perspective, he wanted it less cloak and dagger and more right in your face. And I was like, yeah, totally. That makes total sense. I can write that in. So yeah, collaboration, man.
So we've talked about it. It's in the Kickstarter. Can you give us a little bit about the sword? Are we allowed to talk about the sword, or is that spoiler territory?
You know, the true history of the sword and what it is doesn't even come out until issue 3. So
okay,
it is a slow burn, and so it's hard to give it away right now because that reveals kind of the ancient evil that ties them all together too. So we'll come back to it. We will come back to it. So 32
pages for your first issue. Are the rest of them going to be the same length?
The rest of them are anywhere from 22 to 32 pages. So I gave myself a lot of room in this, where I said, I'm going to take as many pages as I feel like, with a cap of 32 to get there. I did a very loose script because it was one of my first stories, and sometimes I was able to keep it really tight at 22, and some I said, you know, I have a better way to tell this, but I don't want to go back and redo these other pages because I think they're perfect. I'm just going to give myself more pages, and I feel like that's fair too. A lot of publishers will easily publish 22 to 32 pages. It's just up to you if you feel like you can bear the cost of it, right?
So, you know, I got a question that I should have asked earlier. With this being a script that you did, you know, 5 years ago, did you have a lot of eyes on it, and did it go through like a lot of revisions in the beginning, or was this kind of like your first time having a lot of different people look at it?
You know, I had it edited originally by an editor, and then I went through and made a number of revisions to it. So it's probably been revised. This last one I just revised a couple of months ago, even still, and I probably cut 20% of the dialogue down to account for the new panels because I didn't want to obscure the art. And I can be, like any writer, needlessly wordy. And so basically, you know, my final is always probably what was there originally minus 20 to 30%.
Isn't that wild? You're able to take that much from it, and dude, I wouldn't have been able to tell any different.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, and I kind of learned that rule of thumb from Stephen King. If you've ever listened or read On Writing, which is a great memoir about the writing process, and obviously it's about prose, but it's so true. He's like, your editing process is really removing as much needless information as possible to make it the most cohesive story. And especially with comics, where the art tells the story a lot, but sometimes I find myself adding in more context because I don't want to confuse readers either. Where sometimes I can read something and I'm like, I don't know what the fuck just happened. That was pretty cool, but I'm a little confused. And I've always told myself I never want that to happen. I want people to maybe not know the full story, but I want them to be able to follow along and be like, okay, like this is cool. I can
Mm-hmm.
understand this. I'm with it 100%. And sometimes people play with that a little bit where, you know, some writers will say, well, I don't want to handhold, and some artists don't like writers that handhold either. I don't view it as handholding so much as I view it as cohesiveness. It's like I'm not gonna like lay everything out there and be needlessly wordy, but I feel like I want to give enough to have people invested in the story.
Mm-hmm. So right here we have the main cover, right? This is the cover A.
That's it, main cover from Atula. Yep.
So who all are we seeing on this cover?
Those are the main characters. You got Izzy there on the ground. You got Amaya there with the sword, and you have Saria there in the back with her futuristic armor, which I think is the best point of it. I just love how Atula really captured her face. It just it's really eye-catching.
Like the
When I saw the
reflectiveness
cover,
of the glass.
yeah, I just thought it looked great. This was actually a cover to issue 2, and I said I'm gonna use it for the first one because it still goes well. And I said I think I want this one more because it's more catching.
So Devin, well, I mean, I know you didn't have a huge like part in this outside of being like the publisher, you know, in the Kickstarter. What was your thoughts when you started seeing, you know, these covers coming in this artwork?
Just seeing the artwork was just jaw-dropping. You know, this was something different, very unique, and, you know, something that I'd never really encountered, I could really say, in comics. You know, I've been a reader forever, pretty much, 23 years out of my 27. And this was just something that I needed everybody to see, especially that Bella cover right there. Wow, I want a poster of that.
Yeah.
I'm halfway tempted just to do a small run just for us to have, so that way I can have it on the wall at home, because that's just jaw dropping. And then obviously the real Burton cover, which is also another favorite. Really, I love all 3 covers.
Mm-hmm. And CJ, I know this is your first time on the show, but I'm pretty observant, so I'm gonna ask, like, is this like an indication of other, like, you know, trios that we could potentially see?
Absolutely. So it's, I mean, bears have been around in space and time for generations. So I really wanted a kind of a collage cover that I felt kind of paid an homage to that. So yeah.
No, that's cool. And I love like how we have different time periods too.
Yeah,
so cool.
Yeah, Bella's awesome. We're working together. You've seen some of the interiors, Devin, on another project, and we've been working on it for years together, and it's some of her best work that she's turning out. It will be years before it comes to fruition, but that's fine. It'll be one of those longer term projects. I'm still cranking away on it, actually just wrapping up the 6th issue now, but we have a pretty cool mini series that we're working on.
This is gorgeous too, man. Holy crap.
Rio's another one that we're working on, a one-shot together here this year that Devin will publish. So she's phenomenal, and I think that we will see her probably excel beyond working in indie comics where she will be working on work for hire work, and will not be slumming with me anymore or us other indie writers. She will be like out there in the stratosphere. She's amazing.
We have Vike Do, a Calculus and Nader stopping in over on Twitch, saying, "Hey, welcome to the stream. How are you doing today?" So let's go ahead and check out some of these reward tiers, and then we will get wrapping this up. So right now, we have the $6 or more for the digital bearer, so you can get a digital copy of issue 1. Great price for a PDF. And then at 8, you have the Ancient Bearer A early bird special. So you get cover A for $8, cover B for 10, and then the cover A. How do you pronounce that? The cover, the artist for.
Oh, by Siri Wardain.
Okay,
Yep.
there. So that's outside the early bird. So you get a nice little discount for getting it, and you still have 55 hours to go. And then we got cover B for 14, cover A and B both together for 22, and then the Fantastic Con exclusive cover for 25. So that is right here, correct?
Yep.
Yes.
So is this
correct.
going to be available at any other cons, or is it just that one?
This will be specific to Fantasticon, which is in our area.
Mhm.
So for people that want it and cannot attend, you can get it straight from the Kickstarter right now. There are about 50 copies of this. Obviously, if you get the 3-issue tier, which is right after this, that makes it 75 or just a little under that.
Mhm.
And then obviously at Fantasticon, I'll have some more on hand and available for purchase. And then after that, you won't see it ever again. Only people I have are people that bought it, me, CJ, and whoever else.
So we have a big hitter to end things off, and that's the $250 pledge goal, or excuse me, pledge tier comic editing session. So give us a little bit about this.
So I've seen other people, ask for tiers such as this, at least for other people's Kickstarters. And for those that have done them, they've been exceptionally well, probably a bit more than what I would purposefully charge. And I felt that indie comics creators that want feedback but have no idea where to start when it comes to getting an editor or any of that, or don't really know where to look or what it costs, you can literally get my services. I will go over your script with you, as I do with all of my clients. I'm very well versed in what I do when it comes to your editing. I'll tell you everything that's wrong, everything that needs improvement. I will pretty much give you everything from point A to B to make sure that your project is a lot better off than it was before. I want everybody to understand that I want everyone's projects to be the best possible project that they can be. So if you want an editor on your project, you'll back this tier. There are 3 out of 4 left. I made it very exclusive because I still have other commitments as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to take up too many, folks' time waiting on me to knock out an editing session, which, I've got a lot of those on the back end even now to do. So
yeah, 24 pages, man. Holy crap. How much time do you estimate that could be?
Really depends on how much work actually needs to be done on a project. Some projects, I could do it in 24 hours if I'm very, attentive to it. Other times it can be as long as a week, but usually I give myself about 72 hours per gig because I'm usually doing more than one. So that way I give you what you need, and then, all you have to do is plug and play. Mm-hmm. After I've given you everything, it's pretty much I'm on to the next one, you're on to the next stage, because after my edits have been applied, you've seen that they're helpful. I usually get emails literally within 48 hours saying, oh man, these edits are so helpful. And then they move on to the next step. And, you see a lot of benefits from having an editor. Plenty of people can attest to my skills. CJ, Damian Beckton, Chris Moses, folks at Godhood Comics, anybody that's ever hired me for editing, they all know the value that I give you after our sessions. And this is why people keep coming back. I just edited Worlds Away 3 Friday, actually, or maybe it was Thursday, sometime last week. It literally didn't take me that long.
I was going to say, dude, I've interviewed like tons of people who've had you as an editor. So, I mean, I can attest to it too, because I read all those comics and had chats with all of them, and they all have had high praise. Like, I was just asking because I see a lot of editing tiers like 75 or more for just like 1 or 2 hours. So, like, you're giving like the biggest bang for your buck that I've ever seen so far.
Yeah, I try to give value where folks deserve it. So not only are you getting my session, you're still getting a book on top of that. And you get to basically chop it up with me, via email, obviously. on your project.
You don't get to call me.
I don't do phone calls unless
not getting the cell
or,
number.
Exactly. Only a handful of people got my number like that, and I'm trying to keep it that way if I can, unless we foster some better relationship like CJ and Isaac and a couple other folks that are fortunate enough to have a number. If you want to use it, that's cool too, but email.
Oh, that is so awesome. So with that being said, that is the Kickstarter. Right here is the link one more time. And if you guys can't back it, simply sharing it on any social media platform that you can goes a long way. And it's 100% free. You have nothing to lose. And it helps a ton. So with that being said, now that we've taken a look at the Kickstarter, gone through all the tiers, CJ, what would you like to say to anyone that might be on the fence about backing if you just had a few seconds to kind of talk to them?
You know, I think that people that are fans of comics from the 80s will really appreciate it. I felt like it was kind of a love letter to the 80s. It has those kind of classical sensibilities, but kind of modernized too in terms of storytelling format. But when I was creating it, I was like, I really want to make like a 1980s epic fantasy comic book. So I think people that are fans of fantasy and with a little bit of an adult flair to it would really enjoy it. So I hope they'll give it a shot. We've really put a lot of good work into it. Good editing, good insights from Devin, a really good lettering from Isaac, and the covers. I mean, we're making them, as Devin said, very exclusive. So we will not print them again. This is it. Like we're not going to do it if we do another volume or something, or we do the next issue 2 with issue 1 again, it would be a different cover. So this is kind of your one chance to get it right now.
And Devin, as the publisher, what's your thoughts?
As a publisher, I'm here to push the best books that we possibly can. CJ has one of the most phenomenal and epic books that I've had the pleasure of working with and reading. I really think folks that love epic fantasy type stuff, that's also the name of the studio, and sci-fi, and it does have a very 80s feel, especially in a couple of them panels where you finally get to those pages and you'll see it. It really reminds me of stuff that I've read or have watched from the era. So I think this is very much a love letter to the 80s, with a modernized feel, of course. And honestly, if you love good comics, you should be backing this book today, not tomorrow. Today. If you gotta wait till the end of the week, that's cool too. Just don't wait too long, because everything, once it's gone, it's gone. So
get the early bird so you can save money.
Exactly. If you like to save money, early bird. If you want to pay full price, I'm cool with that too. You know what? It helps give you more books. And if you, like I said, if y'all enjoy this book, we have a lot more this year. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Please back this book. You're helping indie supporter, indie comics creators, supporters, and everybody in between, because we can give you even more of what you're craving for material, and we've got a lot of material to give.
Oh, that is awesome. So guys, speaking of that, what's next for you guys? Like, and if there's any spoilers, we don't have to talk about it either, but any upcoming projects you can talk about?
CJ, you want to go ahead?
I mean, we have the comic with Rio Burton that's in the works, Endless Hunt. So that'll be a one-shot fantasy book. So TBD on the date. We have to work on the schedule a little bit. But as Devin said, we also have kind of a shared universe concept that we're working on. I don't know if we want to say I'll leave that to you, Devin, to say what it is. But he kind of hinted at the backup feature that's going to be in his book, and I think we're putting together some really fun stuff. So it's really fun to kind of have the ability to play with each other's toys, so to speak.
Yeah, and like CJ said, we have a lot going on. I'm just gonna go ahead and tell folks, if once this Kickstarter is over and y'all enjoy it, let's get it funded, then the next book in our lovely plethora catalog and all that stuff is Noir, the Defender of Darkness. It is pretty much a vigilante book. Obviously, that name might change before y'all see it, but
Mm-hmm.
that's just the first book in our shared universe. Backup features, a fantastic character, Granite by CJ. Wow, this shared universe is going to be fantastic. It's going to be reminiscent of things that you've seen, but obviously far different than anything that you've ever seen as well. Um, also have a couple more books that are epic fantasy that we cannot talk about just yet, but I will
Mm-hmm.
say there's going to be a lovely summer drop. Uh, watch for it in June. It'll be monthly. Um, like I said, I can't tell you exactly what it is, but you'll see come June. Just watch out for any announcements from myself or CJ and any other people that might show up in Epic Fantasy. And then from there, I've got Magni the Mighty with Band of Bards. I'm working on some other exclusive content, one specifically for Zest World,
Mm-hmm.
which is Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Connor's platform, if I'm correct. Hopefully Jimmy sees this and corrects me. Um, and just a lot of books that I personally have a love for. Another one that's actually something that was an original concept and now has been transformed into something new. And I hope that everybody enjoys what we have to offer this year.
That's gonna be so awesome. So the shared universe, like, and is it all new IPs or any from like pre-existing books that you've done?
On my end, at least, a lot of these concepts I've had in the back of my mind that I just haven't really got to do anything with. Some of the stuff that you'll start to see in June are previously shown IPs, at least on my end. Everyone else is kind of up for debate at the moment. Specifically one for me, Atomics the Nuclear Man. I teased this for 2 years. It's about as old as Magni is, actually, about 3 years old concept. Hadn't really got to do a whole lot with it, and it's my love letter to, say, Silver Age or Golden Age kind of
Mm-hmm.
superheroics. I'm going to move into a different atmosphere, and hopefully the greater shared universe, and there will be some other original characters from Magni's same inception time frame that will also be showing up this year before the year ends. But we'll get to that announcement in June as far as that's concerned on my front. What CJ might have is up for debate and for our discussion.
That is so awesome. I'm so excited for you guys. It sounds like you have a lot coming out in 2023.
Yeah,
Lots going on. Cody, is it all right if I take 2 seconds and plug my stuff coming out through Band of Bards
Go
in
ahead,
Antarctic? So I have Vigia coming out here in 2 weeks through Band of Bards, sci-fi series kind of with an archaeology spin to it. Then in March, I have Lycan, my werewolf one-shot coming out with them. I'm hopeful that it's popular enough because we really want to tell more werewolf stories. And then also in March, I have Interstellar Dust, the collected edition of the first arc through Antarctic Press, and that's going to gear up to lead into the second volume that will come out later this summer from them.
Wow.
So appreciate it if people check out the books. 2023 is going to be a busy year. It's kind of funny for anybody thinking, oh gosh, comics is a slog. It can really happen like that, where things can just start popping for you and you can really get a lot of momentum. So I would just say don't give up to people that are listening to this. Like, oh my God, how do you get so much stuff coming out? A lot of these things have been in the works for a long time and they're just kind of all popping at once. So I know it seems like a lot, like I just pushed them out, but Vigia's very old. Lycan's been written for a long time. Interstellar Dust came out 2 years ago and is getting a collected edition, but sometimes things just kind of happen. So yeah, just keep at it. And if you keep working, good things can happen in your comics career.
Well, you got to think about it too. Everybody's getting a chance to see how good of a writer you are. So now they're like, okay, well, he's killing it in this book. He's going to be killing it in this one too, At least that's my idea, right?
That's the hope. If they like it, yeah, I mean, that'd be great. There's only one review of my stuff online that I've ever found. So
He's like,
So
wink,
hopefully
wink.
it'll be reviewed again in the future.
No, that is so awesome. Well, everyone, we are wrapping things up. Before we let you guys go completely, CJ, Devin, well, Devin, you know the drill. CJ, you are new. So anytime I have guests on the show, I always have to ask for a little bit of advice. You know, as much as we promote your book, it's also nice for a little bit of insight from people who've been doing it, for anyone who might be new and just getting started. So with that being said, what would be your guys' biggest pieces of advice for anyone looking to kind of just dive into creating their own type of universe, like their own type of world with like expansive characters and settings?
You want me to take it?
I've been here before.
Yeah, I would say, so if they're just getting into comics, I think the best advice is really to start small. I think people really overlook the value of a good one shot and how that can lead into something bigger later on. You're also limiting your overhead costs pretty substantially, and you can see if there's demand for it. So you might say, God, I have this epic 100 issue series and it's got to be 100 issues and I love it. It's like, okay, well, it could be 100 issues, but why don't you start off small and start off with a one shot and then see, and then maybe everything can add up to 100 issues. Interstellar Dust, for instance, might be 50 issues, but we're relaunching it each arc, kind of like Hellboy or BPRD, where each arc will be kind of a continuation of that story. And that's really just kind of playing to the market a little bit. Unfortunately, you just have to do that. I feel like in the modern age, but I say to people, kind of start small and build from there, because you can overburden yourself needlessly when you could have something out the door and gobbled up by a publisher like that if it was a one shot or a very small mini series. Once you start getting past 5 issues, people get a little hesitant, I find. So that's what I would say, is you can have something beautiful and epic and sprawling, but be realistic out the gate in terms of how you can get it into a consumer's hands.
And for me, as I've said before, CJ's also said it, start small. My biggest mistake was being too grandiose with things, and I wanted to do it all, do it big, go hard or go home sort of mentality. Please don't do that to yourself, because you're gonna and then you're gonna overwhelm yourself, and then you're not gonna want to do it anymore. It's not gonna be fun at that point. But I suggest, if you're a writer or artist, you do it every day. So I don't care if you have a day job or whatever, practice your craft every single day, but make sure to take the necessary breaks. Even if you do it 2 hours out of your day, that's 2 hours, better that you are for your skill set. Learn how to market yourself. Watch other people market themselves. Look at how well other Kickstarters do, or just whatever. See how people present themselves in their projects. You will do a lot better knowing how to market yourself and your project, and you will make a lot more money that way. You will make a lot more connections that way, because people can see that you do things.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, those big dream gigs you might have with, say, a Marvel or a DC, they might come in the future because people can see you can hit deadlines, you're consistent, your work's great. Don't be one of those people, a friend of mine likes to call pin-up people, because all you get done is pin-ups or, concepts only. You get no story done, you get nothing else done. You're just basically creating yourself an art book at that point for fun. You don't want to do that for fun. If you want to do it for fun, that's good. More power to you. But if you want to be successful and have a career doing comic books, there's going to be a lot of heartbreak. There's going to be a lot of starting small. One shots, one pagers, 2 pagers, 10 pagers. Keep it short, simple. Do black and whites. That's the most cost-effective thing that you can possibly do for a project. Remaster it in color later if you really are adamant on having it in color. But to tell the story that you want to tell, you need to be consistent with everything. Make sure you practice your craft all the time. Like I said, practice how to market yourself, because marketing goes a long way. If I can learn how to market myself in an entirely different avenue, then you can learn how to market yourself in this one. Also, since I'm giving this advice now, you'll be able to purchase a book from me on just breaking in, with proper tips. Hopefully in the next couple of years, I'm actually working on that book. Right now,
Let's go.
I'm not going to say for dummies because no one's, a dummy. If anybody, we all lack the knowledge that someone else is keeping from us, or we're just not seeking out ourselves. And this will be a quick little book to help you at least navigate at first on your own. And then, there's a bunch of references inside that book that I tell people to go buy because I learned from those books. Scott McCloud, a lot of other
I picked
books.
up a Scott McCloud book, I think, because you're in my thread and recommended it. I have it on the shelf. Yeah.
See, there we go. And it's so important to know all of this stuff now going, forward, because you do a lot better. So please, please, please start small, learn everything that I said to learn, and just practice your craft every day, because you won't be better without doing that.
No,
You
absolutely.
could write a full comic in less than a month. A full comic, 22 to 32 pages, pretty standard. 1 page a day, less than a page a day, even.
Exactly.
You can turn it out. Absolutely, if you just sit down and do it. And some people don't have a lot of time, but you can find time to write 1 page. I guarantee it.
100%.
No, that is awesome. Thank you guys for such.
If I can do it, you can do it.
Yep.
No,
Absolutely.
thank you so much for such sound advice, guys. Here is the link one more time. It is Tuesday, the day before New Comic Book Day. Wake up bright and early. You still have time to get those early bird specials, so make sure you dive in on them before you lose it. With that being said, it is time for us to wrap up. I hope you all have a lovely Tuesday, but most importantly, guys, keep it geekly.